Welcome to episode 5 of the Filmmaking Through Music podcast. My name is John Wader, and I am your host. My goal is to help you as a film director, film producer, videographer, have a more commercially appealing film through the effective use of music. I want you to have more emotional and narratively aligned original music in your films in order to elevate them to a level of higher commercial appeal with a better chance of getting into festivals and seeing distribution. I am very excited for this episode because I have simply 5 questions that you need to ask yourself before you hire that composer. And before we get into those 5 questions, let's talk about some consequences that I want you to avoid through asking these questions. And that's just having a bad personal connection. If you dread the process and working with someone, you're both going to care less and you're going to end up with a weak score for your film. You're not going to enjoy the process of filmmaking and having a music made for your film. And it's a very fun process to do. So I want you to have that. I do not want you to have a mismatched musical style because that is where relationships really break down when you're misaligned on expectations. And speaking of breakdown, I do not want you to have communication breakdowns. Poor communication and collaboration in that director-composer process can lead to those misunderstandings, missed creative opportunities, and ultimately a soundtrack that kind of fails to meet your vision. And last, consequence that I want you to avoid here is just budget and timeline issues. Over budget, over timeline. I want to make sure that your film score and your film composer is not a reason that you're over budget and you're over your timeline. Right. I know you want to work with the right person. I know you want to be able to have a good working relationship with them and a smooth process. You don't want to ever have a lack of trust with someone that you've already hired or you've already paid or you feel like you can't go back. And you want certain outcomes. You don't want to have any uncertainty. You don't want to feel uncertain about the outcome for your film score because it's such a huge part of your film. So a simple list of 5 questions that I want you to ask yourself before you hire that composer. Again, there are things that you can kind of ask yourself during those first kind of interviews or introductory calls, or certainly reframe these and come up with some sub questions that you can ask that make sense for you. Ask them to your potential composers so that you can answer these questions for yourself. Because ultimately you want to be in a position that you're working with the person that's best for you, not the best composer you can find, but the best one for you. So the first question that you need to ask yourself when hiring a composer is, do we have a personal fit? This is not about filmmaking. This is not about music. This is, do I see myself spending time with this person? You're going to spend a lot of time with them. You're going to talk to each other a lot. You need to like each other. You need to see yourself working with them. So never underestimate your personal connections with people when hiring a film composer. Now, they've got to meet the requirements in music and filmmaking, but when it all comes down to it, 2 candidates that have the filmmaking acumen and the composing chops, the personal connection, right? So maybe it's not necessarily an existing relationship, but do you see yourself becoming friends with this person? Because the best projects I've worked on are with people that I see myself being friends with or I am friends with because of those projects. The second question that you need to ask yourself before hiring your composer is, does the composer understand our story and its theme? That is the narrative connection right there. Directors should have a clear, obviously, as a director, you have a clear understanding of the narrative, the story arc, the themes, the emotional tone, but is your composer getting it as well? Not even as much as do they logically or intellectually understand it, but are they able to empathize with it? Do they get it, right? Do they care about it? That understanding and that alignment will allow your composer to, again, be more inside that director's head and able to convey the director's vision and story more appropriately. Again, I think I go into some of those really in episode 1 of this podcast where we talk about mood, story, tone, and vision. And speaking of vision, that leads us to question number 3 that you need to ask yourself before hiring a composer. Are we aligned on the artistic vision and creative compatibility? And so, directors have been known to seek out composers without even knowing them up front for their artistic vision and their creative uniqueness, because the director might already know, I want that aesthetic. I want that mood in my film when it comes to the music. And so while that might not apply to every project, it's essential to find composers where the artistic vision and the creative compatibility can kind of mesh together and build together and get that expectation of review and feedback. A huge part of that artistic vision and sort of what I call creative compatibility is the existing portfolio and background of that composer itself. Like, is kind of a sub question of number 3 here is like, is their portfolio and past films aligned with something that I could see myself working with? And so you're not trying to recreate their past work, but you're able to generate a little bit of trust as a director, saying, they've done this genre before. I trust that they'll be able to do it. Even though we're doing it something differently, I know that they'll get that. And we see that in the industry a lot, right? There are composers that are known for certain genres and certain styles of music. Okay, the fourth question that you need to ask yourself before hiring that composer is, does their approach to communication and collaboration work with our team? The composer is being brought onto the team. And so it's not just that one-on-one relationship with the director, but the communication styles and ways of working has to work with composer, director, editor, sound designer, and that list can grow if you have music supervisors and music editors as well as producers. I'm very big on effective collaboration and communication. Episode 2, I talked through the whole reason why I try to get off email, and I use Slack and I use project management systems to help increase collaboration, where a lot of times I'm the one bringing to the project an elevated sense of importance on effective collaboration and communication. But every project is going to be different. And so this is actually a two-way question. So I'm also asking myself this, if I want to work with certain directors, if my approach to collaboration and communication aligns with where they're thinking as well. All right, and the fifth and final initial question that you're going to want to ask yourself before hiring that composer is the big one, which aligns to episode 3, is around budget. I put a budget and timeline question, and that's, can we work within this budget and timeline? And so again, timeline, similar to the communication and collaboration question, timeline and budget, very much two-way street questions. As a director, you want to say, all right, like I really want to work with this composer. We have this budget in mind. Here's their number. Okay, great. That's within budget. It's a little bit higher, but it's worth it to me. Right? The value is outweighing that increased cost and budget. And of course, the timeline is, all right, well, the composer is available and we need this now. Or it's, hey, let's get this composer on board now. So let's book up their time well in advance, which I'm a big proponent of. So I hope this episode can help get you an idea of the things you need to ask yourself before hiring a composer. You will come up with other questions that certainly make more sense to your specific film or your specific experience or things that you care about. But overall, every conversation about hiring a composer, you should be asking yourself, 1, do we have a personal fit? 2, does this composer understand our story and its theme? 3, are we aligned on our artistic vision and creative compatibility? 4, does their approach to communication and collaboration work with our team? And 5, can we work within this budget and timeline? Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've been enjoying these first episodes of the Filmmaking Through Music podcast. Please, if you have not already, subscribe to our email list where we'll be sending out announcements of future podcast episodes, as well as some general filmmaking through music advice, frameworks, models, and that you can grab the film scoring guide for directors and filmmakers as well. Again, thank you so much for listening. Happy filmmaking.